of this fight. I just came back from the island of Dominica in the Caribbean. It's an island that has already protected 45% of their land. 65% of their land is forest. The entire canopy disappeared during Hurricane Maria in 2017, but 5 years later, they have recovered everything. The forest is resilient because it was protected. In the ocean, that island, Dominica, has a resident population of sperm whales, these gentle giants of the ocean. We were swimming with the sperm whales, with groups of 5, 6 moms and calves, animals as large as 10 meters long, 12 meters long, animals that go down 1,000 meters to hunt for a squid for 45 minutes and come to the ocean to rest and sleep vertically underwater. But the coastal resources are overfished and they are at a tipping point. So speaking with Prime Minister Skerrit a couple of days ago and learning about the 30 by 30 target, he decided that Dominica would join, would support. So Dominica is the latest country, now I think 116, that supports the 30 by 30 global target, land and sea. But even though there are 116 countries supporting the target, others have not shown support yet and may have particular concerns about meeting the ocean targets. Some still think it's a national target, but it is a global target. And we do need the 30% ocean target there. So this is an emergency press conference. Today we will hear from a political perspective, the Minister of Natural Resources and Environment of Samoa, Tuelo Sulu, Cedric Schuster. We will hear from a philanthropic perspective from Melissa Wright of Bloomberg Philanthropies, and we will also hear an indigenous perspective from Solomon Pili Kahohoa Halahala, a 7th-generation native Hawaiian descendant, Kupa'aina, from the small island of Lanai. He serves as the Papahanaumokuakea native Hawaiian elder on the Reserve Advisory Council and as the chair of the Hawaiian Islands Hambaguel National Marine Sanctuaries. Every panelist will speak for about 3 minutes, so we have time for questions. And I'll start with the problem. And the problem is that we have diminished the ability of the ocean to provide for us. The majority of fish stocks are overfished. And except for a few honorable cases, the management of fisheries has not been sustainable, which affects food security and livelihoods. And coastal habitats continue to be destroyed and developed worldwide. Yet less than 8% of the ocean is somehow protected. And only 3% of the ocean is in highly and fully protected areas that deliver the greatest benefits to people. And we know, the science is very clear, that the only way to reverse the loss and restore marine life and all the benefits that it provides to humanity is through protecting the right areas. If we protect the right 30%, we can bring back marine life, increase fishing catch via spillover of fish from marine reserves, avoid significant carbon emissions, and help the ocean mitigate climate change by absorbing and storing more of our carbon pollution. Economically, 30% also makes so much sense. Every dollar invested in highly protected areas produces $10 in economic output. And 30% protection would also create millions of new jobs in a new conservation economy. The status quo, instead, is a game of serial depletion of species and ecosystems and diminishing return. And finally, 30% is not the goal, it's a milestone. Studies show that we need something closer to half of the ocean if we are to prevent the collapse of our life support system during our lifetimes. But we also need to use the other 70% sustainably. It is in the unprotected 70% where our use of resources really has to be done more responsibly and more sustainably, and let that 30% help to regenerate the rest of the ocean. So the biggest threat to food security, livelihoods, and the very survival of island nations like Samoa and Hawaii is overexploitation and global warming. That's why we absolutely need a strong 30% ocean target in parallel to achieving the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. And I'm pleased to welcome Minister Lee White of Gabon also, who will provide the political perspective. So first I'll pass it to Minister Schuster from Samoa.
There we go. G'day. I'm the Minister from Samoa. oceans is our livelihood. We're small islands, but we are big ocean states. Over 98% of our total EZ are covered by ocean. And it's the total dependency of our countries are on protecting the ocean. And it is why one of the issues that Samoa has joined this coalition, because we want to protect not only our terrestrial area, but our marine resources, of which our livelihood, our survival depends on having a collective, a global goal of having 30%. It is not just for our economy, but it's also our cultures, our livelihood. The survival of the oceans means we as a people, we as a culture can survive. So, in joining this as part of work that we in Samoa are doing, we've developed our Samoa Ocean Strategy, of which we're now working on our marine spatial planning to identify the most critical areas that we can. 30% for us is the minimum for survival and for to getting our economic development. We need to have a strong strategy, strong implementation program. So having this goal at the CBD, both part of the GBF and working alongside a lot of our Pacific Island states, which globally we occupy about 30% of the ocean. So having together work with the other countries in the world will enable us to not only provide for our survival, but also provide resources that will create and enable development at the global level. We have tuna fish stocks, which are the highest in the world. We also have whale marine sanctuaries. As mentioned before, these are some of the marine resources and marine species that are important to us, but also globally. We're also working, providing technical, soliciting and working on developing our own technical support so that we are able to monitor and effectively implement our programs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. And I'd like to give the floor to Minister Lee White of Gabon, which has already protected about 30% of their waters.
Thanks, Enrique. When we worked together to create 20 marine protected areas, we only protected 27%. So you have to come back and help me find the other three. I'm a guerrilla biologist who became a minister, but who also, for a while, focused on marine protected areas. Luckily, I had some good advice from Enrique and his team. The amazing thing about marine conservation, and Gabon is it's almost 50-50. We're 45% ocean and 55% land, and that's 88% rainforest. The wonderful thing about protecting 30% minimum of the oceans is that if you design it right, as Enrique says, you increase productivity, you increase the potential sustainable catch of fisheries, you restore fisheries, you restore the oceans. On land, I can protect as many national parks as I want, but I can't cut more trees down or sustainably harvest more wildlife around those parks because I'm protecting terrestrial protected areas. So the Marine 3030, which seems to be more problematic here than the land, should be easier because it's a win-win situation where the co-benefits for kind of traditional fisheries communities, the co-benefits for carbon sequestration, the co-benefits for our climate and so on are so evident. And so I think we really have to push here at COP15, push for 3030 on land and sea. In Gabon, we are also focusing on freshwater ecosystems as an additional 30% because often we neglect freshwater biodiversity just assuming it's captured by terrestrial parks. But I would argue that the ocean should be the easiest. I guess the problem is not all of the oceans fall within territories and EEZs, and it's the tragedy of the commons. Countries want to do whatever they want, and in those international spaces without restriction, but that really doesn't make ecological sense. And if it doesn't make ecological sense, it does not make long-term economic sense, because it cannot possibly be sustainable. And so the 30% in the oceans, I think, is absolutely about a sustainable planet. And without harnessing the power of our ecosystems to make this world sustainable, then we are going to end up leaving our children and our grandchildren with a huge problem to overcome. So let's keep up the fight. And we will be getting to 30% sometime soon.
27% is pretty good. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, ministers, and thank you, Enrique, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Melissa Wright. I'm with Bloomberg Philanthropies, but I also represent Michael Bloomberg in his role as UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Climate Ambition and Solutions. And we were in Sharm el-Sheikh just last month, and were able to do a couple of things. One, we brought the ocean conversation around 30 by 30 to the climate negotiations. It was remarkable to me that that was not a centerpiece and has not been a centerpiece in the discussions around climate action or solutions for a very long time. And now here we are in Montreal at the Biodiversity Conference, and we're bringing the ocean into the biodiversity conversation. Please don't forget how important the ocean is to people around the world, to biodiversity, and to our global economies. As we see the negotiators entering the final stage of this conference, it's really worth reminding ourselves of a really stubborn reality. We can't begin to address the climate change crisis or the biodiversity challenges without urgent and bold action to protect the ocean. Not only is the ocean home to an astonishing biological diversity, 250,000 species we know of, and more that we don't even know of yet, waiting to be discovered maybe by Enrique and some of his expeditions. It also makes life as we know it possible, producing at least 50% of the oxygen we breathe and blunting the most severe impacts of global warming. It's estimated that the ocean has absorbed over 90% of all the surplus heat and 20 to 30% of the carbon dioxide emissions resulting from human activity since the 1980s alone. Many of us are older than that. I think that we need to be very, very conscious of what we're deciding as a global community today. What we would be sacrificing if we were not to protect, as the science demands, the ocean. So not only is it important for our individual health, it's important for the global community and for nutrition and livelihoods around the world. Today, 1 out of 10 people depend on a healthy ocean to earn a living, making it indispensable to a functioning global economy, to say nothing of just achieving the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And I don't have to tell you that the ocean and the life it supports, including our own species, is in peril. Scientists warn that if present trends continue, marine populations face a scale of biodiversity loss rivaling the catastrophic mass extinction event that doomed the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. It doesn't have to be this way. Time and again, research demonstrates that well-managed marine protected areas, or MPAs, those that enforce prohibitions on fishing and other human activity, they can really make a huge difference. And leading scientists say we need to pull out all the stops to protect at least 30% of the ocean by 2030 to keep the climate and biodiversity emergencies from spiraling out of control. At the UN General Assembly meeting last September in New York, Bloomberg Philanthropies announced a $204 million investment in data-driven solutions, policy measures, and community involvement designed to preserve coral reefs, prevent illegal fishing, and protect vital marine ecosystems and species at risk from climate change and ocean acidification. This was done as part of Michael Bloomberg's climate portfolio and action for preventing the worst of global warming. But it was also done as part of our commitment to the Protecting Our Planet Challenge, where a group of major philanthropists have spoken out and are calling for 30% protection of the globe, land and ocean, and they are putting $5 billion toward that challenge. I was in Lisbon for the UN Ocean Conference in June, where the Protecting Our Planet Challenge collectively announced $1 billion for the ocean alone through 2030. And we are really committed to supporting the countries that are committed to this 30% target globally and in country over the course of the decade. The Bloomberg Ocean Initiative builds on the success we've seen from uniting nonprofit organizations, local leaders, national governments, and international institutions to protect the ocean. It's a global challenge requiring global collaboration between funders, scientists, advocates, and other stakeholders to be successful. And perhaps nowhere is this more evident than with the progress made by the High Ambition Coalition that Enrique mentioned earlier, and that members of are on the stage with us today from the governments that are participating. And Bloomberg has been proud to support it. It's currently led by Costa Rica, France, and the United Kingdom. And it's an intergovernmental group that has convincingly made the ecological and economic cases for 30 by 30 over the past few years, helping to bring, I think Enrique said, about 115 countries on board the effort and making the slogan a rallying cry here. Bloomberg Philanthropies is committed to supporting these efforts and others over the long term, so governments can be confident in their ability to implement 30 by 30 on the water. The future of the ocean and all it sustains depends on the action we take this week. There may never be another chance like this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. And finally, Uncle Sol.
Aloha mai kako. I'm very honored to be here with this very esteemed panel of experts. I'd like to bring to you to the table a Native Hawaiian perspective, and if I can briefly share with you where we come from. We have a story, a very old story, a song or a chant that's called Kumulipo. And in that story, it says that from the deepest depths of the darkness to the light, that combined energy created what we call the vali, or the matter. And in that matter, life was spawned, and the first creature created from the vali is the uku ko'a. For us, is the coral polyp. And then all things are created following the creation of the coral polyp from the deep seas into the nearshore waters, onto the land, into the mountains, and even taking flight into the sky. So we as a people, we are not here on this beautiful place we call island Earth until much later. So therefore, from a Hawaiian perspective, it is our responsibility to care for our kupuna, or tupuna, or our ancestors. And that means that we bear responsibility to care for all things that precede us to the eldest, which is the coral polyp. So to have these ideas of division of terrestrial and marine does not exist in our worldview, is that our existence was really contingent on that integration and that care for all things and ecosystems. Even so much so that in our story, we have paired the ocean to the land or the sky. As an example, in the story of the chant, it says that the palawa, which is the whale of the deep sea, is paired with the awa, or the sandalwood tree of the land. And so in that connection, in our cultural perspective, if the condition of the palawa is endangered or is in trouble, we must also look at the condition of the awa, the tree, the sandalwood of the land. And in that kind of perspective, it helps us to have clearly a view that all things must be in balance. So this idea of 20 by 30 by 30 for us is like Enrique said it's a milestone, but in a Native Hawaiian perspective, it is almost saying as though only 30% of our ancestors are important, and that the other 70, we might just have to put them aside. So you see that it's real difficult from us to just create these percentages, these boundaries, and these lines. And I would say that it would be my responsibility, and I hope all of you would consider that 100% of our ancestors should be protected. But this is a Hawaiian perspective. So we've incorporated this kind of thinking and planning and the management in places like our large marine protected area like Papahanaumokuakea. And we're also trying to apply this in the other marine protected area, which is the Pacific Remote Islands. And should we be able to increase the boundaries of both areas together, the United States would in fact reach its 30% protection of the oceans. But I want to raise the bar. I think that we need to go far beyond that, because it is our ancestors that are important, and we should bear that in mind, that I am not here today without them. So I have responsibility. So I'm happy to be here, and I would hope that this will transform these discussions at these high-level meetings and of importance for biodiversity. So with that, I leave you. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much. So, okay, after these amazing remarks, we have a few minutes for questions, and so get as many questions as possible. Remember, a question is a short sentence followed by a question mark. Please mention your name and who you are addressing the question to. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Celia. I'm a journalist from Barcelona, Spain. First of all, when you talk about 30%, I would like to know which areas do you think should be protected, and what would be the criteria to decide which areas to protect? And second, are you optimistic regarding the ocean? Because the ocean has been somehow like left aside in many negotiations. Land has been the priority, and it seems that it's so difficult to get to protect the ocean. Thank you. Enrique Sala or whoever wants to answer.
Lee, since you have already protected almost 30%, you want to answer the question of what areas should be protected? What are the criteria?
I can do that, but you're the expert. As I said, I'm a guerrilla biologist. I mean, we need to assess which are the richest ecosystems, the most fragile ecosystems, the fisheries, breeding grounds, the 30% of the ocean that can make the most significant impact to the balance and the integrity that we need to establish across the entire oceans. And so that's the approach we took in Gabon. We captured the most important sea turtle breeding grounds. We captured the areas where the humpback whales are migrating. We captured the estuary mouths and lagoon mouths, which are important for fisheries reproduction. We tried to kind of take a balance between resident fish populations and migratory fish populations, and when we came up with what we hope is a somewhat optimized system of marine protected areas. I said in my comments, in terms of optimism, in these negotiations, there seems to be more resistance for 30% of our oceans than 30% of land. And for me, the opposite is logical. It should be easier to do the land. You know, why is it an issue, Enrique?
Don't ask me. I'm not in the negotiations. Minister, are you hopeful?
Thank you. From a national standpoint, it's different areas that we look at. From a science point of view, we look at the ecosystem. From a traditional landowner and villager, we need the areas that they depend on, their livelihood depends on. So we need to protect both of those, that where they are able to sustainably and manage the fishery resources. But from a country standpoint, both the inshore and within our EEZ, the 30% is identifying, as mentioned before. This is why we ourselves are working on our marine spatial planning to identify the most critical areas that we can protect and areas that we know will enable us to, at the national level, but also at the international level, to provide the resources that support the economic development at the national level, but also ensure the fishery migrations, like tuna, are able to be available for everyone else. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. Another question?
Thanks very much. I'm Jim Gamble from Anchorage, Alaska. I have a question for Saul. Saul, the waters around your home are unique in many ways, partially because they contain both a National Marine Sanctuary and a National Marine Monument. What has that meant to the waters of your home? What has that meant to your people in the community? What changes have you seen?
Well, it meant that in terms of conservation, it has allowed the indigenous Hawaiian community to bring forth our traditional practices in management. And we've had a lot of pushback by a lot of different interests, especially fisheries, who said that we were denying them from access to marine protected areas. But in fact, more recently, you will find the report that says that the expansion of like Papahanau Mokuakea has in fact increased their fishing catches for fisheries. But more importantly, the cultural context is that our archipelago is divided by culture in Po and Ao. So there's a dark that goes beyond or the north of the Tropic of Cancer, and then Ao, which is south. And it is the relationship of creation in Po, the dark, where the spirits are, where the guards dwell, and then Ao, which is on the south of the Tropic of Cancer, where the people are. And so we are in a place where we can contribute our conservation, and we can use that as management tools. And so it helps us to strengthen our position about why marine protected area should incorporate indigenous practices, and it is working. So we would invite you, take a look at what we've done for Papahanau Mokuakea, and look and Google Mai Kapo Mai, and you'll see our indigenous management plan that's actually collaborating with the science. So you've got Hawaiian science and you've got Western science, and this is a model that helps to bring that all together, because it's ultimately the one island Earth that we have to take care of.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions. I'm just going to say that from what we heard, the division between land and sea doesn't make sense. Everything is connected, and protecting the right 30% will protect food security. By the way, the president of Palau today has published an opinion article in Thomson Reuters about protecting the ocean for food security. It will protect cultures. It's a multiple win, and it should be much easier than the land. This is the conundrum and the paradox here. So thank you to our panelists very much. Thank you so much for your attention.
Okay. Thank you.
I will now invite the next participant to come on the main stage, please.